Next spring, I suppose.
I must look out for it.
We'll send you a copy. Well, if you're here when it comes out, I'll give you a ring about it.
Oh, of course, you're in the city office now.
Yes, I am, but I still come up here as often as I can.
I'm sure you do. You know, you people make such an intimate little group. You confuse me. I can't make out who's here and who's in the city office.
It's very simple. It's so arranged now that the married ones, my brother Gordon, Betty, Robert, and I are here. And the single ones, Owen and Stanton, are in the city office.
Then come back here every time there's the smallest excuse. Only I haven't the luck to have as many excuses as Charles Stanton has, but I do my best.
I'm sure you do. So would I. Miss Peel, I think you ought to marry Mr. Stanton. Don't you think you ought to marry Mr. Stanton?
Well, why should I?
I didn't know you were a matchmaker, Miss Mockridge.
I'm not. In the ordinary way, I consider it a disgusting business. But I like things symmetrical, and I like a neat pattern. So you see, if you married Mr. Stanton, that would complete the pattern here. We'd have 3 directors and 3 pairs of adoring husbands and wives.
I must say the adoring husbands don't seem in a hurry to join their wives tonight.
Oh, aren't they pigs? I wonder what's keeping them.
Well, I think I know one thing that's keeping them. Robert has just acquired some old brandy that he's terribly proud of. And I suppose they're sampling that.
They're probably laughing at something very improper.
No, I know them. It's just gossip. Men like gossip.
Of course they do.
Well, why shouldn't they?
Exactly. Why shouldn't they? People who don't like gossip aren't interested in their fellow creatures. Therefore, I insist on my 3 publishers gossiping.
Yes, but they always say it's business. I don't mind Gordon drinking Robert's old brandy, and I don't mind him gossiping. But I do object to him coming in, as he will, you'll see, looking very important and pretending he knows all the secrets of the publishing business.
Well, Betty, you may know Gordon better than I do, but even if he is your husband, he's my brother. And I've known him long enough to realize he has to look important now and again about something rather absurd.
I hope you don't mean by that, Mrs. Chatfield, you consider the publishing business absurd. As a woman who gets her living through it, I protest.
And as another woman who also gets her living by it, though in a humbler capacity, I also protest.
Meanwhile, I'm almost prepared to marry Mr. Stanton myself to become part of your charm circle here. What a snug little group you are.
Are we?
Well, aren't you?
A smart little group. How awful.
Not awful at all. I think it's charming.
It sounds disgusting.
Yes, like Dickens or a Christmas card.
And very fine things to be liked, too, let me tell you. In these days, almost too good to be true.
Oh, why should it be?
I didn't know you were such a pessimist, Miss Mockridge.
Didn't you? Then you don't read the reviews of my books, and you really ought to, you know, being an employee of my publisher. I shall complain of that to my 3 directors when they come in. Certainly I'm a pessimist. I'm an intelligent woman. Oh, of course I didn't mean it in that way. I think it's wonderful here.
It is rather nice here. We've been lucky.
It's enchanting. I hate to leave it.
It must be comforting to be also settled.
Quite the cozy little nest.
Oh, talking about nests. What about that white bird that comes into your garden nearly every night? Do you suppose you might see it now?
We might try. It usually comes about this time. Perhaps we might get a glimpse of it. That is if it's condescending to visit us tonight.
That sounds interesting. What does it look like?
I suppose it's a white owl. But it looks like the ghost of a bird.
How exciting!
I can't see anything at all.
Just a second, I'll turn off the lights.
Robert! Robert, what was that? Robert!
All right, I was showing them my gun and took a crack at a flower pot. Pretty good shot. And once more I hit it. We'll be in a minute.
I should hope so. Oh, those idiots firing Robert's revolver out of the window.
You want to take it away from him. He nearly frightened the life out of me.
Well, there's no chance of seeing our bird now. If it was there, it must have cleared out pretty quick.
I should say so. After all that racket.
Well, perhaps it will come back later.
No, I hardly think so. I've never got sight of it much after 10.
I suppose you will miss your brother-in-law. He used to be up here with you too, didn't he?
You mean Robert's brother, Martin?
Yes.
What made you think of Martin just then?
Well, I don't quite know. He just came into my head, I suppose.
It must have been the shot.
Oh, surely not. I was away at the time and never quite understood what happened. Something rather dreadful, wasn't it? Oh, I'm sorry if I...
No, it's all right. It was rather distressing for us at the time, but it's done with now. Martin shot himself. It happened a year ago, last October, in fact, at his own cottage, about 20 miles from here.
Oh, yes, dreadful business, of course. I met him only twice, I think. I remember I thought him very amusing and charming. He was very handsome, wasn't he?
Yes, very handsome.
Who's very handsome?
Not you, Charles.
Well, who is it? Or is it a secret?
Well, they must have been talking about me. Betty, why do you let them rave about your husband like that?
Darling, I'm sure you've had too much manly gossip and old brandy. You're beginning to look purple in the face and bloated. A typical financier.
Why so dim? I'm sorry about the gun, Frida. That was stupid. I hope I didn't frighten anybody.
As a matter of fact, you did, all of us.
Yes, and I've just been saying what a charming little group you've made here, all of you.
I'm glad you think so.
I think you've all been lucky.
I agree. We have.
It's not all luck, Miss Mockridge. You see, we all happen to be nice, easygoing people.
Except Betty. She's terribly wild.
That's only because Gordon doesn't beat her often enough.
Oh, yeah.
You see, Mr. Stanton is still a cynical bachelor. I'm afraid he rather spoils our picture.
Oh, you must have a dark relief to offset.
I wonder if there's any dance music on the radio tonight.
I hope not. Let's be quiet. Well, what have you people been talking about?
Owen has been telling us about the sleeping dog.
The Sleeping Dog? Oh, yes, that novel we're going to publish. The one she's so keen on.
Why does it call it that?
Don't you know the proverb, let sleeping dogs lie?
Where does that come into it?
From what Owen says, a sleeping dog represents truth.
Yes, and the chief character, the husband, insisted upon disturbing it.
Well, he was quite right to disturb it.
Was he? I think it a very sound idea. The truth as a sleeping dog.
Still, we do spend too much of our time telling lies and acting them.
Oh, but one has to. I'm always fibbing. I do it all day long.
You do, darling. You do.
It's the secret of my charm.
Very likely, but we've had something more serious.
Serious or not, I'm all for it coming out. It's healthy.
I think telling the truth is about as healthy as skidding around the corner at 60.
And life's got a lot of dangerous corners, hasn't it, Charles?
It can have, if you don't choose your route well. To lie or not to lie? Well, what do you think, Owen? You're looking terribly wise.
Well, I agree with you. I think telling everything is dangerous. The point is, I think there's truth and truth.
Oh, I always agree to that. Something and something.
What, Gordon?
Yes, go on.
Well, the real truth. That is, every single little thing with nothing missing at all wouldn't be dangerous. I suppose that's God's truth. But what most people mean by truth is only half the real truth. It doesn't tell you all that went on inside everybody. Well, it simply gives you a lot of facts that happen to have been hidden away, and were perhaps a lot better hidden away. Oh, it's rather treacherous stuff.
Yes, like the muck they drag out of everybody in the law courts. Where were you on the night of the 27th of November? Answer yes or no.
Yes. I'm sorry, Miss Peel. I'm not convinced. I'm ready to welcome what you call half the truth. The facts.
So am I. I'm all for it.
You would be, Robert.
What do you mean by that, Frida?
Oh, anything, nothing. Let's talk about something more amusing. Who wants a drink? Drinks, Robert. Cigarette, Miss Mockridge?
No thanks. That's the one habit I've managed to avoid.
Cigarette, Owen.
Oh, thanks. I remember that box. It plays a tune, doesn't it? I remember the tune. Yes, it's that little melody.
Nice, isn't it?
It can't have been this box, you remember, Owen. This is the first time I've had it out.
Oh, it belonged to Martin. He showed it to me.
He couldn't have shown it to you, Owen. He hadn't got it when you saw him last.
Well, how do you know, Frida?
That doesn't matter. I know. Martin couldn't have shown you this box, Owen.
Couldn't he? Oh, no, perhaps he couldn't. I suppose I got mixed up. I must have seen another box like that someplace else and then pushed it onto poor Martin because he was always so fond of things like that.
Owen, I'm going to be rather rude, but I know you won't mind. You know, you suddenly stopped telling the truth then, didn't you? You're absolutely positive that that box is the one Martin showed you, just as Frida is equally positive it isn't.
Well, does that matter?
Oh, not a hoot. I'm trying to find some dance music, but this thing has suddenly decided not to function.
Then don't fiddle about with it.
Don't bully Gordon.
Will you stop him?
Stop it, Gordon.
No, I don't suppose it does matter, but after what we've just been saying, I couldn't help thinking that it was rather an odd, provoking situation.
Just what I was thinking. It's all terribly provoking. More about the cigarette box, please.
It's all perfectly perfectly simple.
Wait a minute, please, Frida. I don't think it is all perfectly simple, but I can't see that it matters now.
I don't understand you.
Neither do I. First you say that can't have been the same box, and now you're saying it's not all perfectly simple, and begin to hint at grand mysteries. I believe you're hiding something, Owen, and that isn't like you. Either that box you saw was Martin's, or it
Oh,
wasn't.
damn that box.
Oh, but Mr. Stanton, we'd
Oh,
like...
sorry, but I hate a box that plays tunes. Let's forget it.
Oh, yes, and Martin, too. He isn't here, and we are.
Gordon, please.
Don't let's mention Martin or think about him. He's dead.
Well, there's no need to be tragic about it, Gordon. One would think you owned Martin to hear you talk.
Instead of which, nobody owned Martin. He belonged to himself. He had some sense.
What does all that mean, Betty?
It means I'm being rather stupid, and you're all talking a lot of rot. I think I'm going to have a headache at any minute.
Is that all?
Isn't that enough?
More about the box, Frida.
I wish you wouldn't be so absurdly persistent, Robert. It came with some other of Martin's things from the cottage. I put it away, and this is the first time it's been out here. Now, the last time Owen was at Martin's cottage was that Saturday when we all went over. You remember, at the very beginning of October.
Gosh, yes. What a day that was. And a marvelous night. Well, that was the time we all sat in the garden for hours. And Martin told us all about those ridiculous people he stayed with in Vermont. The hand-woven people.
Yes, and that long, thin woman who always said, "Do you belong?"
I don't think I've ever had a better day. Well, we'll never have another day like that.
Yes, it was a good day. But I had no idea you felt so deeply about it, Gordon.
Neither had anybody else. Gordon seems to have decided that he ought to be sentimental every time Martin is mentioned.
Well, I suspect it's Robert's old brandy and those enormous glasses. They go to his head.
Where else do you want them to go to?
The point is, then, that first Saturday in October was the last time Owen was at Martin's cottage.
Yes, and I know that he hadn't got that cigarette box then.
No, he'd have shown it to us if he'd had it then. As a matter of fact, I never remember seeing the thing at the cottage at all. So there you are, Owen.
There I am.
Yes, but hang it all, where are you?
You are a baby, Robert. I don't know where I am. Out of the dock or the witness box, I hope.
Oh, no, that would be too disappointing.
You know, that wasn't the last time you were at the cottage, Olin. Don't you remember? You and I went over that next Sunday afternoon to see Mark about those etchings.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
But I don't remember his showing us the cigarette box. In fact, I've never seen it before.
Neither have I. And I don't think I ever want to see it again. I never heard such a loud fuss about nothing.
I agree with you, Charles. But I may as well tell you, Owen, if only to have done with it, that Martin couldn't have shown it to you that Sunday anyhow because he hadn't got it then.
You seem to know a lot about that box, Frida.
That's just what I was going to say. Why are you so grand in knowing about it?
I know why. You gave it to him.
Did you, Frida?
Yes, I gave it to him.
Well, that's queer. I don't mean it's queer you're giving it to him. Why shouldn't you? But when did you give it to him? Where did you pick it up?
That's easily explained. You remember the day before that awful Saturday? You were staying in town and I came up for the day. Well, I happened to see the cigarette box in a shop. It was amusing and rather cheap, so I bought it and had it sent parcel post to Martin.
Oh, so that he never got it until that last Saturday.
Yes.
Well, that's that.
I'm sorry, Frida, but it's not quite so simple as all that. You mustn't forget that I was with Martin at the cottage that very Saturday morning.
Well, what about it?
Well, I was there when the parcel post came with the letters in the morning. I remember Martin had received a parcel of letters. I don't forget anything about that morning. And neither would you if you'd been dragged into that hellish inquest as I was. But Martin didn't have that box.
It must have arrived by the afternoon post then. What does it matter?
It doesn't matter at all, Frida, darling. Except that parcels are never delivered by the afternoon post.
Yes, they are.
No.
How do you know?
Because Martin used to grumble about it and say that he received books and manuscripts a day late. That box didn't arrive in the morning because I saw the post open, and it couldn't have been delivered in the afternoon. Frida, I don't believe you ever sent the box. You took it to Martin yourself. You did, didn't you?
Oh, you are a fool, Gordon.
Possibly, but you did take it to Martin, didn't you?
Did you, Frida?
Well, if you must know, I did.
Frida.
I thought so.
But Frida, if you went to the cottage to give Martin the box after Gordon left, why, you must have been there later than anybody. Only a few hours before Martin shot himself.
I did. I saw him shortly before dinner.
But why haven't you said anything about this? Why didn't you come forward at the inquest? You could have given evidence.
I could, but why should I? It was bad enough Gordon having to do it.
Oh, and it was hell.
If it could have helped Martin, I'd have gone. But it couldn't have helped anybody.
That's true. You were quite right.
I understand that. But why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep it to yourself? Why have you kept it to yourself all this time? You were the very last person to talk to Martin.
Was I the last person?
You must have been.
Then what about Olwen?
Olwen? Oh, the cigarette box.
Yes, of course, the cigarette box. Martin didn't get that box until late Saturday afternoon, and Olwen admitted that he showed it to her.
No, she didn't. She said it was some other box, and I hope we believe her and have done with it.
No, Mrs.
Yes,
Frida,
I do. It's all wrong going on and on like this.
And I second that.
And I don't.
Oh, but Robert.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty. After all, you don't come into this. Martin was my brother, and I don't like these mysteries, and I have a right to know.
All right, Robert, but must you know now?
Well, I don't see the necessity. But then again, I didn't see why I should have been cross-examined with the entire approval of the company, apparently. But now that it's your turn, Olwen, I've no doubt that Robert will relent.
I don't see why you should say that, Frida.
You might as well admit it, Olwen. Martin showed you that box, didn't he? So you must have seen him. You must have been at the cottage that Saturday night.
Yes, he did show me that box. It was after dinner, about 9 o'clock on that Saturday night.
You were there? But this is crazy. First Frida, and then you, and neither of you said a word about it.
I'm sorry, Robert, I couldn't.
Why were you there?
I've been worried about something. Something I'd heard. It had been worrying me for days, and I felt I had to see Martin to ask him about it. So I motored up to the cottage. I had some dinner on the way and got there about 9 o'clock or just afterwards. Nobody saw me go and nobody saw me leave. You know how quiet it was there. Like Frida, I thought it wouldn't serve any good purpose to come forward at the inquest, so I didn't. That's all.
But you can't dismiss it like that. You must have been the very last person to talk to Martin. You must know something about it.
Robert, please, let's leave it alone. It's all over and done with. Well, we don't mean to discuss it, do we, Frida? There's nothing to discuss. It's all over.
But look here, woman. You must tell me this. Had your visit to Martin that night anything to do with the firm? You said you'd been worried about something.
Oh, Robert, please.
I'm sorry, but I must know this. Was that something to do with that missing money?
Oh, for God's sakes, don't drag the money into it. We don't want that all over again. Martin's gone. Leave him alone, can't you? Just shut up about the rotten money.
Gordon, be quiet. You're behaving like an hysterical child tonight. I'm sure we must be boring Miss Mockridge with all this.
Oh, no. I'm finding it very enjoyable.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon, Miss Mockridge.
I think we'd better change the subject, Robert.
Oh, not at all. Well, I think... Oh, it must be getting late. I think I ought to be going. The Pattersons said they'd send their car for me. It hasn't arrived, you know?
Yes, I heard it as we left the dining room. I told the man to wait in the kitchen. I'll get hold of him for you.
Oh, must you really go?
Oh, yes, I really think I ought. It's at least a half an hour's run to the Pattersons. And I'm sure they don't like their car and chauffeur out too late. Thank you for everything. It's been so delightful seeing you all again.
Good night, Miss Mockridge.
Good night, Mr. Stanton. Good night, Mrs. Whitehouse.
Good night. I'll help you with your wrap.
I'm glad she's gone.
I am too. I can't bear that woman. She reminds me of an old geometry teacher I used to have.
I've always suspected your geometry, Betty. Drink, Gordon?
No, thanks.
That was mean. Because after all, she's not at all a bad novelist. I don't mean she's just a good seller, but she's a good novelist, too. Why is it there seems to be always something rather unpleasant about good novelists?
Oh, I give it up. But I don't call Maud Mockridge a good novelist, Charles.
I'll bet she's a good gossiper.
She is. She's notorious for it. She'll embroider that cigarette box story and have it all around town within a week. The Pattersons will have it tonight to begin with. It must have been agony for her to go away and not hear anymore.
She wouldn't have gone if she thought she had heard anymore. But she's got enough as it is. She'll probably start a new novel in the morning and we'll all be in it.
Well, she'll have to use her imagination a bit with me.
And me. Perhaps she'll invent the most frightful vices for us, Betty.
Well, you know she can't do much with what she just heard. I mean, after all, why shouldn't Frida have taken Martin a cigarette box? And why shouldn't Owen have gone to see him?
Yes, why not?
Oh, I forgot you were there, Owen. May I ask you something, Owen? After all, I don't believe I've asked anybody anything so far, have I?
You may ask. I don't promise to answer.
I'll risk it then. Were you in love with Martin, Owen?
Not in the least.
I thought you weren't.
Well, as a matter of fact, to be absolutely candid, I rather disliked him.
Yes, I thought so.
Oh, rot! I'll never believe that, Owen. You couldn't dislike him. Nobody could. Well, I don't mean he had any faults or anything, but with him they just didn't matter. He was one of those people. You had to like him. He was Martin.
In other words, you're God. You know, Gordon literally adored him, didn't you, darling?
Well, he could be fascinating. He was very clever. I must admit, Porter's never been the same without it.
I should think not.
How could it be?
Now we can thrash this out.
Oh, no, please, Robert.
I'm sorry, Olin, but I want to know the truth now. There's something very queer about all this. First, Frida going to see Martin and never saying a word about it. And then you going to see him too, Owen, and never saying a word about it either. It's not good enough. You've both been hiding this all along. You may be hiding other things as well. It's about time some of us began telling the truth for a change.
Do you always tell the truth, Robert?
I try to.
Noble fellow. But don't expect too much of us ordinary mortals. Spare our weaknesses, please.
What weaknesses?
Anything you like, my dear Frida. Buying musical cigarette boxes, for instance. I'm sure that's a weakness.
Or making rather too much use of one's little country cottage. I think that, too, under circumstances, might be described as a weakness.
You mean Martin's cottage? Huh, I hardly ever went there.
No, I wasn't thinking of Martin's.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
Look here. What's this all about? Are you starting now, Stanton?
Certainly not.
Well, I want to get to the bottom of this Martin business, and I want to do it now.
Oh, Lord. Is this going to be another inquest?
Well, it wouldn't be necessary if you'd heard more of the truth, perhaps, when there was an inquest. And it's up to you, Owen. You were the very last to talk to Martin. You must know something about it. Why did you go to see him? Was it about the missing money?
Yes, it was.
And you knew he had taken it,
No.
but you thought he had.
I thought there was a possibility he had.
Oh, and you were all damned ready to think that.
Gordon, I want to go home now.
So soon, Betty.
I'm going to have an awful headache if I stay any longer. I'm going home.
All right, just a minute.
I'll take you along, Betty, if Gordon wants to stay on.
No, I want Gordon to come along too.
All right, but hang on a
I
minute.
tell you, I want to go now. Take me home.
Why, what's the matter, Betty?
I'm just being stupid, I suppose.
All right, we'll go.
I'm sorry if all this has upset you.
Don't go on and on about it. Why can't you all just leave things alone?
Well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
I'll see these infants home and then turn in myself.
Very good of you.
Yes, isn't it? Good night.
Good night.
Now, Owen, you can tell me exactly why you rushed over to see Mark like that, about the missing money.
But we're all being truthful now, aren't we?
I want to be.
What about you, Frida?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I don't care. What does it matter?
Queer way of putting it.
Is it? Well, sometimes, Robert, I'm rather a queer woman. You'd hardly know me.
You started all this, you know, Robert. Now it's your turn. Will you be truthful with me?
Good God. Yes, of course I will. I loathe these mysteries. But it's not my turn. I've asked you a question that you haven't answered yet.
I know you have, but I'm going to ask you one before I answer yours. I've been waiting for some time to do it, but I've never had the chance, or never dared. Well, now I don't care. It might as well come out. Robert, did you take that money?
Did I take the money?
Yes.
Of course not. Do you think, even if I had taken it, I'd let Martin shoulder the blame for it like that? When Martin took it, of course. We all know that.
Oh, what a fool I've been.
I don't understand. Surely you must have known that Martin had taken it. You can't have been thinking all this time that I did.
Yes, I have. And I've not been thinking it, I've been torturing myself with it.
Damn it all, it doesn't make sense. I might have taken the money. I suppose we're all capable of that under certain circumstances. But never on earth would I let somebody else, and especially Martin, take the blame for it. How could you think me capable of such a thing, Olin? I thought you were a friend of mine, one of my best and oldest friends.
You might as well know, Robert.
Oh no, Frida, please. Please.
You might as well know, Robert, and how you can be so dense baffles me. That Olwen is not a friend of yours.
Of course she is.
Oh, she's not. She's a woman who's in love with you. A very different thing. She's been in love with you for ages.
Frida, that is damnably unfair. That's cruel.
It's not going to hurt you. If he wanted the truth, oh, let him have it.
Olin, I'm terribly sorry. We've always been very good friends, and I've always been very fond of you.
Stop. Frida, that's unforgivable. You've no right to say that.
But it's true, isn't it? You wanted the truth, Robert, and here it is. Some of it. Owen's been in love with you for ages. I don't know exactly how long, but I've been aware of it for the last 18 months. Wives are always aware of these things. And I'll tell you now what I've longed to tell you for some time. I think you're a fool for not being aware of it yourself, for not having responded to it, for not having done something drastic about it long before this. If somebody loves you like that, for God's sake, enjoy it. Make the most of it. Hold on to it before it's too late.
Frida.
Yeah.
I understand now.
Oh, understand what?
About you. I ought to have understood before.
If you mean by that, you understand Frida doesn't care for me very much, you're right. We've not been very happy together. Somehow our marriage hasn't worked. Nobody knows.
Of course they know.
Do you mean you've told them?
Of course I haven't. You mean by them, the people we know intimately, our own little group here? They didn't need to be told.
But Olwen has just said she only understood about it for the first time.
No, I knew about that before, Robert. It's something else. I've just...
Well, what is it?
I'd rather not explain.
Be noble now, Olwen. You needn't, you know. We're past that.
No, it isn't that. It's because there's something... I can't talk about it. There's something horrible to me about it, and I can't tell you why.
Something horrible?
Yes, something really horrible. Well, let's talk about that side of it.
But Olwen...
I'm sorry I said I understood. It just slipped out. Please.
Very well. But you've got to talk about that money now. You said you believed Robert had taken it.
It looked to me as if he must have.
But if you believed that, why didn't you say anything?
Oh, Robert. Can't you see why she couldn't?
You mean she was shielding me?
Yes, of course.
I'm terribly sorry, Olwen. I had no idea. Though it's fantastic, I must say, that you think I was that kind of man, and yet you go on caring enough not to say anything.
But it's not fantastic at all.
If you're in love with somebody, you're in love with them. And they can do all sorts of things, be mean as hell, and you'll forgive them. Or just not bother about it. At least some women will.
I don't see that in you, Frida.
Don't you? But then there are a lot of things about me you don't see. But this is what I wanted to say, Olwen. If you thought that Robert had taken that money, then you knew that Martin hadn't.
Yes, I was sure after I talked with him that last night that Martin didn't take that money.
But you let us all think he had.
I know, but it didn't seem to matter then. Well, it couldn't hurt Martin anymore. He wasn't there to be hurt. And I felt I had to keep quiet.
Because of me.
Yes, because of you, Robert.
But Martin must have taken it.
No.
That's why he shot himself. He was terribly nervous. He always was. He simply couldn't face it.
No, it wasn't that at all. You must believe me. I'm positive Martin never touched that check.
Well, I've always thought it queer that he should. It wasn't his style at all, doing some sneaky work with a check. I knew he could be wild and rather cruel sometimes. But he couldn't be a cautious, cunning little sneak thief. That wasn't like him, and he didn't care at all about money.
He spent enough of it. He was badly in debt.
Yes, but that's just the point. He didn't mind being in debt. He could have cheerfully gone on being in debt. Money simply didn't matter. Now you loathe being in debt. You're entirely different.
Yes, that was one of the
Yes, I
reasons
see
why...
that. But I think that those fellows who don't mind being in debt, who don't care about money, are just the sort to help themselves to other people.
Yes, but not in a cautious, sneaky way. That wasn't like Martin at all.
Owen, where did you get the idea that I had taken the money?
Because Martin himself was sure you'd taken it. He told me so.
Martin told you so.
Yes, that was the first thing we talked about.
Martin thought I had taken it.
Yes.
But why should he have thought that? He knew me better than that.
When you thought he'd been the thief. You didn't know him any better, it seems.
I'd been told something. Besides, I wasn't at all sure. It wasn't until he shot himself that I felt certain.
You say you've been told something, but then Martin had been told something too. He'd practically been told that you'd taken that check.
What?
And do you know who told him?
I can guess now.
Who?
Stanton, wasn't it?
Yes, Stanton.
But Stanton told me that Martin had taken it.
Oh, but he...
He said he didn't want Martin given away, so we'd all stand together, that sort of thing.
But don't you see, he told Martin all that too. And Martin never would have told me if he hadn't known, well, that I'd never give you away.
Stanton.
Then it was Stanton himself who got that check.
It looks like it.
Oh, I'm sure it was. He played Martin and Robert against each other. Could anything be more vile?
You know, it doesn't follow that Stanton himself was the thief.
Of course he was.
Wait, let's get this clear. Now that check made payable to bearer was on your father's desk, Frida, in his private office. And only three of us had access to the office. Martin, Stanton, and I. The check disappeared, cashed at one of the branch banks where none of us were known. Now, the teller was rather vague about it, except that the person cashing it was about the age and build of Martin or myself. So it couldn't have been Stanton.
How could you believe that Martin had taken that check?
Because the evidence pointed to Martin or to me, and I knew I hadn't taken it.
And Stanton told you that...
That he had seen Martin coming out of your father's office.
Stanton told Martin he'd seen you coming out of that office.
Stanton took that money himself.
And whether or not Stanton took that money, he's got to explain this. And no wonder he didn't approve of this and was glad to be out of it. He's got too much to hide.
We all have too much to hide.
And let's let some daylight into it for once. If it kills us, Stanton's got to explain this.
No, not tonight.
Tonight.
So they've probably all gone to bed.
Are you going to get them all back, Robert?
Yes. Hello, is that you, Gordon? He is he? Well, I want you both to come back here. Yes, more and more of it. It's damn important. Oh no, we can keep Betty out of it. Well, all right then. Be as quick as you can. They're coming back.
Are they all coming back?
No, not Betty. She's going to bed.
Wise little Betty.
What do you mean, Olin? You know very well she's not mixed up in this.
Do I?
Well, don't you?
Poor Robert. Look at him now. This is really serious, he's saying to himself. How we give ourselves away. It's a mystery we have any secrets at all.
No, but, oh, hang it all, Olin. You've no right to sneer at Betty like that. You know very well it's better to keep her out of all this.
No, we mustn't soil her pure young mind.
And after all, she's younger than we are, and she's terribly sensitive. Why, you saw what happened to her before they went. She can't stand the atmosphere of this.
No, I suppose not.
Obviously, you dislike her, Olin. I can't imagine why. She's always had a great admiration for you.
I'm sorry, Robert, but I can't return her admiration, except for her looks. I don't dislike her, but, well, I can't be as sorry for her as I'd like to be, or ought to be.
Is it necessary for you or anybody else to be sorry for her? You're talking wildly now, Olin.
Oh, I suspect not. And anyhow, it seems to be our evening for talking wildly. Also, I'm now facing a most urgent problem. The sort of problem that only women have to face. If a man has been dragged back to your house to be told he's a liar, a cad, and a possible thief, Oughtn't you to make a few sandwiches for him?
Don't get no sandwiches from me.
Oh, no sincerity, no sandwiches. That's your motto, is it? No. Oh dear, how heavy we are without Martin. And how he would have adored all this. He'd have invented the most incredible and extravagant sins to confess to. Oh, don't look so dreadfully solemn, you two. You might be a bit brighter. Just for a minute.
I'm afraid we haven't your light touch, my dear Frida.
I suppose I feel like this because in spite of everything, I am a hostess expecting company, and I can't help thinking about bright remarks and sandwiches. And there they are. You'll have to let them in yourself, Robert.
Frida,
Yes,
have you really known a long time?
yes, more than a year. And I've often wanted to say something to you about it.
What would you have said?
I don't quite know. Something idiotic, but friendly. Very friendly.
And I only guessed about you tonight. I can't think why I never guessed before.
Neither can I.
This is quite mad, isn't it?
I'm rapidly getting madder. I don't care, do you? It's rather a relief.
Yes, it is, in a way. But it's rather frightening, too. Like being in a car when the brakes are gone.
I can't see why. I'm sorry about this, Frida, but it's Robert's doing. He insisted on our coming back.
I think Robert was right.
Well, that's a change. Well, what's it all about?
Chiefly about that money.
Oh, hell, I thought as much. Why can't you leave poor Martin alone?
And wait a minute, Gordon. Martin didn't take that money.
What? Are you sure? Are you joking?
Yes, for sure.
You know, I never could understand that. It wasn't like him.
Do you really believe that Martin didn't get that money? If he didn't, who did? And if he didn't, why did he shoot himself?
We don't know, Stanton, but we're hoping that you'll tell us.
Being funny, Robert?
Not a bit. I wouldn't have dragged you back here to be funny. Now, you told me, didn't you, that you were practically certain Martin took that check.
Certainly I did. And I told you why I thought so. All the evidence pointed that way. And what happened afterwards proved I was right.
Did it?
Well, didn't it?
If it did, then why did you tell Martin you thought Robert had done it?
Don't be ridiculous, Frida. Why should I tell Martin that I thought Robert had done it?
Yes, why should you? That's exactly what we want to know.
But of course I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Oh, are you in this too?
Yes, I'm in this, too. Because you lied like that to Martin, telling him you were sure Robert had taken the check. You've given me hours of misery.
But I never meant to, Olin. How could I know that you would go and see Martin and that he would tell you?
It doesn't matter whether you knew or not. It was a mean, vile lie. After this, I feel that I never want to speak to you again.
I'm sorry, Olin. I'd rather anything had happened than that. You do believe that, don't you?
Apparently the rest of us don't matter very much. But you owe us a few explanations.
You better stop lying now, Stanton. You've done enough. Why did you play me and Martin against each other like that?
There can only be one explanation, because he took that check himself.
My God! You didn't, did you, Stanton?
Yes, I did.
Oh, then you're a rotten swine, Stanton. I don't care about the money, but you let Martin take the blame. You let everybody think he was a thief!
Don't be such a hysterical young fool! Sit down and behave yourself! You want to spell into a free-for-all? You let Martin... I didn't let Martin take the blame, as you call it. He wasn't the sort to take the blame, and you ought to know that. Happened in the middle of all the fuss about this money that he shot himself. You all jumped to the conclusion that it's because he had taken the money and was afraid of being found out. I let you go on thinking it, that's all. You might as well think he shot himself for that as for anything else. Anyhow, he was done with it, out of it. Besides, where he's gone, it doesn't matter a damn whether people here think he stole the money or not.
But you deliberately tried to fasten the blame on Martin or me.
Of course he did. That's what makes it so foul.
Not really. I had not the least intention of letting anybody else be punished for what I've done. I took that check because I needed some money quickly and I didn't know where else to turn. I knew I could square it up in a week, but when it all came out, I had to play for time. And that seemed to be the easiest way of doing it.
But you couldn't have cashed the check at the bank.
No, I got somebody else to do that. A fellow who can keep his mouth shut. It was pure coincidence that he happened to be about the same age and build as you and Martin. Don't go thinking there was any deep-laid plot. There wasn't. It was all improvised. And haphazard. Damn stupid.
Why didn't you confess to all this before, Stanton?
Why the devil should I?
You can't see why. It's hopeless just to try and show you. But there is such a thing as common honesty and decency.
Is there? Don't forget, before you become too self-righteous, that you happen to be taking the lid off me. It might be somebody else's turn before we finished.
Possibly, but that doesn't explain why you've been so quiet about all this.
I should have thought it did. Martin's suicide put paid to the whole thing. Nobody wanted to talk about it after that. Dear Martin must have done it, so we won't mention it. That was the line. It wasn't the money. I'd have been glad to replace that. But I knew damn well that if I confessed, the old man would have had me out of the firm in 2 minutes. I wasn't one of his pets like you and Martin. I had to work myself up from nothing in the firm. I had been brought in because I had the right university and social backgrounds. If the old man thought for a minute that I'd done it, there'd have been none of this hush-hush business. He felt like calling in the police. And don't forget, I've been a clerk in the office. You fellows haven't. It makes a difference, I can tell you.
But my father retired from the firm 6 months ago.
Well, what if he did? The whole thing was over and done with. Why open it up again? It might never have been mentioned if this damn full inquisition hadn't been started tonight. Robert Gordon and I were all working well together in the firm. What would have happened if I confessed? Where are we now? Who's better off because of this?
You're not, it's true. But Martin is, and the people who cared about him.
Are they?
Of course they are.
Don't be too sure.
Well, at least we know he wasn't a mean thief.
And that's all you do know. But for all that, he shot himself. And you don't suppose he did it for fun, do you?
You want that sort of talk, Stanton.
Why should I? You wanted the truth, and now you're getting it. I didn't want to be brought back here and be put in the witness box. It's your own doing. I'll say what I damn well like. Martin shot himself, and he did it knowing he'd never touched the money. So it must have been something else. Well, what was it? You see what you started now?
What have we started? You're talking now as if you knew a lot more about Martin than we did.
What I do know is that he must have had some reason for doing what he did, and that if it wasn't the money, it must have been something else. You're probably a lot better off for not knowing what that something is. Just as you've been a lot better off if you hadn't started poking about and prying into all this business.
Maybe he did it because he thought I had taken the check.
And then again, perhaps not. If you think that Martin would have shot himself because he thought that you'd taken some money, then you didn't know your own brother. Well, he laughed when I told him. It amused him. Lots of things amuse that young man.
That's true, I know. He didn't care.
But look here, Stanton. Do you know why Martin did shoot himself?
No, how should I?
You talk as if you do.
I can imagine reasons.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, he was that sort. He got his life into a mess, and I don't blame him.
You don't blame him. Who are you to blame him or not to blame him? You hung your mean little piece of thieving round his neck, tried to spoil our memory of him, and now, when you're found out and Martin's name is in the clear, you want to begin all over again and start hinting that he was a criminal or a lunatic or something.
The less you say now, Stanton, the better.
The less we all say, the better. You should have thought of that before. I told you as much before you began dragging all this stuff out. Like a fool, you wouldn't leave well enough alone.
Anyway, I've cleared Martin's name.
You've cleared nothing yet. And if you'd a glimmer of sense, you'd see it. But now I don't give a damn. You're going to get all you asked for.
One of the things we shall ask for is to be rid of you.
Do you think you'll stand with the firm after this?
I don't know, and I don't care.
You did a year ago.
Yes, but now I don't. I can get along better now without the firm than they can without me.
Well, at least we'll have the pleasure to try. You always hated Martin, and I knew it.
I had my reasons. Unlike the White House family, father, daughter, and son, who all fell in love with him.
Does that mean anything, Stanton? Because if it doesn't, just take it back. And if it does, you'll kindly explain yourself.
I'll take nothing back.
Stanton, please, don't let's have any more of this. We've all said too much already.
I'm sorry, Owen, but you can't blame me.
I'm waiting for your explanation.
Don't you see? He's getting at me.
Is that true, Stanton?
I'm certainly not leaving her out.
Oh, you be careful.
It's too late to be careful. Why do you think Frida's been so angry with me? There's only one reason. I've known that reason for a long time. She was in love with Martin.
Is that true, Frida? I must know, because if it isn't, I'm going to kick Stanton out of this house.
Don't talk like a man in a melodrama. I wouldn't have said it if I had known it was true. Whether she admits it or not is another matter. But even if she doesn't admit it, you're not going to kick me out of the house. I'll go the ordinary way, thank you.
Is it true, Frida?
Yes.
Has that been the trouble all along?
Yes, all along.
When did it begin?
A long time ago. Or it seems a long time ago. Ages.
Before we were married?
Yes. I thought I could break it then. I did for a little time, but it came back worse than ever.
Oh, I wish you'd told me. Why didn't you tell me?
I wanted to. Hundreds of times I tried to. I've said the opening words to myself so often, sometimes I've hardly known whether I didn't actually say them out loud to you.
I wish you had. But why didn't I see it for myself? It seems plain enough now. I know now when it began. It was when we all stayed up at the lake that summer.
Yes, it began then. Oh, that lovely, lovely summer. Nothing's ever been quite real since then.
Martin went away, and you said you'd stay a few days with the Hutchinsons. Was that when...
Yes, Martin and I spent that little time together. It was the only time we really did spend together. Didn't mean much to him. Sort of experiment, that's all.
Didn't he care?
No, not really. If he had, it would have all been so simple. That's why I never told you. I thought when we were married it would be different. It wasn't fair to you, I know, but I thought it would be all right. But it wasn't. You know that too. It was hopeless. But you don't know how hopeless it was. For me.
But why didn't Martin tell me? You must have known how unhappy I was.
He couldn't. He was rather afraid of you.
Martin afraid of me?
That's true.
Nonsense. Martin wasn't afraid of anybody, and certainly not of me.
Yes, he was, in some strange way.
I know that. He told me that when you're really angry, you'll stop at nothing.
That's queer. I never knew he felt like that. It couldn't have been this.
No, he didn't care. Oh, Martin, Martin.
Frida, don't.
That's how it goes on, you see. Good evening's work.
I'm not regretting this. I'm glad all this stuff has come out. I just wish to God I'd known earlier, that's all.
What difference would it have made? You couldn't have done anything.
To begin with, I'd have known the truth. And then something might have been done about it. I wouldn't have stood in their way.
You didn't stand in their way.
No, it was Martin himself. As Frida says, he didn't care. He told me about it.
Gordon, I don't believe you.
Why should I lie? Martin told me. He used to tell me everything.
Rubbish. He thought you were a little nuisance, constantly hanging about him.
That's not true.
It is. He told me so that very last Saturday when I took him the cigarette box. He told me then he had to do everything he could to be rid of you.
Frida, you're making this up. Every word of it. I know you are. Martin would have never said that about me. Well, he knew how fond I was of him. And he was fond of me too, in his own way.
He wasn't.
You're just saying this because you're jealous.
I'm not.
You've always been jealous of Martin's interest in me.
Gordon, that's a disgusting lie.
It isn't.
It is. He told me himself how tired he was of constantly having you around him and suddenly becoming hysterical. Oh, I see what he meant now. Every time he's been mentioned tonight, you've been hysterical. What are you trying to make me believe you are?
Frida, you're mad.
It's all jealousy. Jealousy. If he thought I was such a nuisance, he wouldn't have kept asking me down to the cottage. Oh, but he was tired of you pestering him and worrying him all the time. He didn't really care for women. He was sick of them. And you wanted me to tell you too so that you'd leave him alone.
You're making me feel sick.
Well, you just leave me
Stop it, both of you.
And I was going to tell you too. Only then he killed himself.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Martin couldn't have been so cruel.
Couldn't he? What did he say to you that afternoon after you took him the cigarette box?
What does it matter what he said? You're just making up those abominable
Look
lies.
here, both of you. I'm not having any more of this. I understand about you, Frida, and I'm sorry. But for God's sakes, keep quiet about it now. And as for you, Gordon, you must be drunk or something.
I'm not. I'm as sober as you are.
Then behave as if you were. You're not a child. I know Martin was a friend of yours.
Of course he was. Martin was the only person on earth I really cared about. Couldn't help it, there it was. I'd have done anything for him. Money. My God, I would have stolen 10 times the amount from the firm if Martin had asked me to. He was the most marvelous person I'd ever known. Sometimes I tried to hate him. Sometimes he gave me a hell of a time. But it didn't really matter. He was Martin. And I'd rather be with him, even if he was jeering at me all the time, than be with anyone else I've ever known. Or like Frida since he died. I haven't really cared a damn. Well, he didn't really care for women. He tried to amuse himself with them. He distrusted them, disliked them. He told me so, many times. Mark told me everything. And that was the finest thing that ever happened to me. And now you can call any name you like. I don't care.
But what about Betty?
You can just leave her out of this.
I want to. I can't stop thinking about her.
Well, you needn't. She can look after herself.
But that's exactly what she can't do. She shouldn't have to. Can't you see that?
No, I don't see it. And I know Betty better than you do.
You know everybody better than anybody else does, don't
Oh,
you?
you would say that, wouldn't you? I can't help it if Mark liked me better than he liked you.
How do you know that he's like
Stop
you?
it, both of you. Can't you see that Martin was making mischief just to amuse himself?
No, I can't. He wasn't like that.
Oh, no, not at all like that. You couldn't ask for a quieter, simpler, more sincere fellow.
Nobody's going to pretend he was that. But at least he didn't steal money and then try to put the blame on other people.
We could all start talking like that, Frida, just throwing things at each other's heads. But I suggest we don't.
I agree with you. But I do want Frida and Gordon to understand that it's simply madness quarreling over anything Martin ever said to them. He was a born mischief maker, cruel as a cat. That was one of the reasons why I disliked him so much.
Olin?
Yes, I'm sorry, Robert, but I didn't like Martin. I detested him. You ought to have seen that.
And you weren't quite right, Owen. I'm afraid you always are.
No, I'm not.
I trust your judgment, and you're the only one of us who will come out of this as sound as you went in.
That's not true.
No. It was Owen and that damn cigarette box that began the whole business.
Oh, that was nothing. You knew about that all along.
You knew about what?
I knew you'd been to see Martin that Saturday night.
You knew?
Yes.
But how could you? I don't understand.
I was spending that weekend at my own cottage. You remember that garage where the road forks? You stopped there that night for some gas.
Yes, I believe I did.
They told me and said you'd taken the old road, so I knew you must have been going to see Martin. You couldn't have been going anywhere else, could you? Quite simple.
And you've known all this time?
Yes, all this time.
I suppose it's no good asking, Stanton, why you've not said a word about all this.
Oh, I'm afraid not. I think I've done my share of the confession box tonight.
Well, I wish I'd known a bit more, that's all. There I was dragged into that foul inquest. Did I know this? Did I know that? My God! I wasn't the last person to see Martin at all. Frida had been there sometime in the afternoon. Oh, and Owen had been there that very evening. At the very moment, for all we know.
Don't talk rubbish.
Well, is it rubbish? After all, what do we know? What was Owen doing there?
She's told us that. She was there to see Martin about the money.
And how far does that take us?
What do you mean by that?
He means, I imagine, that Olin hasn't told us very much so far. We know she went to see Martin about that money, and that he thought Robert had taken it, and that she thought so too. And that's all we do know.
Yes. We don't know how long she's been there, or what Martin had said to her, or anything. Oh, it's a good thing she wasn't pushed in front of that corner. Well, say that had it out of her in no time. I think it's up to her to tell us just a little bit more.
Well, there's no need to sound so damn vindictive about it.
Wait, there's somebody out there.
There's no one there now.
No, they darted away, but I'll swear there was somebody. They've been listening.
Well, they could have chosen a better night for it.
It's impossible. There isn't a sign of anybody, Olin.
Oh, thank the Lord for that.
Who on earth can this be?
I don't know. I haven't the slightest idea. Go and see.
I know, but we don't want anyone interrupting us.
Well, don't let them interrupt us, whoever they are. But you'll have to see who it is.
we haven't.
I thought you'd gone to bed, Betty. What's the matter?
You're talking about me, all of you. I know you are. I wanted to go to bed. I started to go, but then I couldn't. I knew you were all saying things about me, and I couldn't stand it. I had to come back.
Well, you were wrong. As a matter of fact, you're the one person we haven't been talking about.
Is that true?
Of course it is.
You were outside just now, weren't you? Outside that window, listening.
No, I wasn't listening. I was looking in to see exactly who was here and what you all looked like. You see, I was sure you were all saying things about me. I meant to go to bed. I was tired. But then I felt too excited to sleep, and now I'm so damn nervous. God knows what I shall be saying in a minute. You mustn't mind me.
I'm so sorry, Betty. Not a word's been said about you. In fact, no one wanted to keep you out of this. It's all rather unpleasant.
Seeing that Betty has married into one of the families concerned, I think she ought not to be too carefully protected from the sordid truth.
Keep quiet, Frida.
I thought we should see different Robert now.
Oh, after what you said tonight, I can't see that it matters much how different to you I may be.
Perhaps not, but I still like reasonably decent manners.
Then set us an example.
Oh, be still, both of you.
Well, what have you been talking about then?
Well, it began with the money.
You mean that Martin took?
Martin didn't take it. We know that now. Stanton took it. He's admitted it.
Admitted it, Stan! Stanton! Surely it's impossible.
Sounds impossible, doesn't it, Betty? But it isn't. I'm sorry to go down with such a bump in your estimation, my dear Betty, but this is our night for telling the truth. I had to admit I took that money. Terrible, isn't it?
What did you mean by that, Stanton?
I meant what I said. I nearly always do.
Why did you use that tone of voice to Betty?
Perhaps because I think that Betty has not a very high opinion of me, and so need not have sounded so surprised and shocked.
I don't quite understand.
I'm sure you don't, Robert.
Well, do you?
Yes, I think so.
But if Martin didn't take the money, then why? Why did he shoot himself?
Well, that's what we want to know. Owen had been the very last to see him, and she knew he hadn't taken the money. But that's all she's told us.
I've told you that he thought Robert had taken it.
And that was enough. In the state he was in then, to throw him clean off his balance. All that stuff about his merely being amused is nonsense. That was just his bluff. Martin hated anybody to think he felt really moved or alarmed by anything.
That's true.
And he depended on me. He used to laugh at me a lot. That was nothing. He depended on me. You've all told me he was secretly rather frightened of me. Well, that was because Martin had a respect for me. He thought I was a solid, steady one. I tell you, it must have been a hell of a shock to poor Martin.
I don't think it was, Robert.
I don't think so either.
But neither of you knew him as I did. Oh, what's the good of talking? He was in a wretched state, all run down and neurotic. And when he heard that I had taken the check, he probably felt that there was nobody left he could depend on, that I'd let him down. He was probably brooding about it day and night. He was that sort. He wouldn't let you see it, Owen. He wouldn't let anybody see it, but it would be there all the time, giving him hell. Oh, God, what a fool I was. I had to have gone straight to him and told him what Stanton had told me.
If this is true, then the person really responsible is Stanton.
Yes,
Rubbish.
it isn't. Don't you see what you did?
No, because I don't believe it.
Because you don't choose to, that's all.
Oh, talk sense. Can't you see Martin had his own reasons?
No! What drove Martin to suicide was my stupidity and your damn lying, Stanton. That settles it. Once and for all.
You're not in a state to settle anything.
Listen to me, Stanton.
Oh, drop it, man.
You've got to answer.
Well, I'm never going to forgive you for telling Martin what you did. By God, I won't.
You got it all wrong.
They haven't, you rotten liar. You made Martin shoot himself.
Wait a minute, Gordon. Martin didn't shoot himself.
Martin didn't shoot himself?
No, I shot him.
Well,
Owen!
that's impossible, Owen. You couldn't have done it.
Are you joking?
I wish I were.
She
Owen.
must be hysterical.
Owen's not hysterical. She means...
Oh, Lord! She can't mean she murdered him. Well, can she?
You might as well tell us exactly what happened now, Owen. And I might as well tell you before you began that I'm not at all surprised. I suspected this from the first.
You suspected I had done it. But why?
For 3 reasons. The first was that I couldn't understand why Martin should shoot himself. You see, I knew he hadn't taken the money. Though he was in every kind of mess, he didn't seem to be the sort who'd get out of it that way. Then I knew he'd been with him quite late, because, as I said before, I'd been told you'd gone that way. And the third reason, well, that'll keep. You better tell us what happened now. It was an accident, wasn't it?
Yes, it was really an accident. I'll tell you what happened, but I can't go into details. It's all too muddled and horrible. But I'll tell you the complete truth. I won't hide anything more, I promise you. I think we'd all better tell everything we know now. Really speak our minds.
Yes, I agree.
I went to see Martin that Saturday night, as you know, to talk to him about the missing money. Mr. Whitehouse had told me about it. He thought that either Martin or Robert must have taken it. I gathered it was more likely Robert, so I went to see Martin. I didn't like Martin, and he knew it. But he knew, too, what I felt about Robert, and after all, he was Robert's brother. He believed Robert had taken the money, and he wasn't a bit worried about it. I'm sorry, Robert, but he wasn't. He was rather maliciously amused. The good brother fallen at last, that sort of thing.
I can believe that. I hate to, but I know you could be like that.
I've never seen him as bad as he was that night. He wasn't really sane.
Olin?
I'm sorry, Robert, but he wasn't. I didn't want you to know all this, but there's no help for it now. You see, he'd been taking some sort of drug.
Drug?
Yes, he'd had a lot of it.
Are you sure? I can't believe it.
It's true. You remember when he went to Berlin and how nervous he was just then? Well, a fellow he met there put him onto it. Some new drug that a lot of the so-called bohemians were doping themselves with.
But did Martin like it?
Yes, he liked it and took more and more of it.
But how could he get it?
Through someone he knew in town. Oh, and when he couldn't get it, he was pretty rotten.
But didn't he try to stop him?
Of course. But he only laughed. I don't blame him, really. None of you can understand what life was to Martin. He was so sensitive. Oh, he was one of those people who are meant to be happy.
We're all those people who are meant to be happy. Martin's no exception.
That's true. But I know what Gordon means.
You couldn't help knowing what he means if you knew Martin. There was no middle state, no easy jog trot for him. Either he had to be joyful, and when he was joyful, he was more joyous than anybody else in the world. Or he was intensely miserable.
What about this drug, Olin?
He took some while I was there, and it had a terrible effect on him. It gave him a sort of devilish gaiety. I can see him now. His eyes were queer. Oh, he really wasn't sane.
What happened?
I've tried not to think about it. He knew I disliked him, but he was so frightfully conceited he couldn't believe it. He seemed to think that everybody young, male or female, ought to be falling in love with him. He saw himself as a sort of Pan.
Yes, he did, and he'd every reason to.
He began taunting me. He thought of me, or pretended to, as a priggish spinster full of repressions who's never really lived. All rubbish, because I'm really not that type at all. But he pretended to think I was, and kept telling me that my dislike of him showed that I was trying to repress a great fascination he had for me. And of course, that all these repressions were bad for me. I'd never live, never would live, and all the rest of it. He talked a lot about that. I ought to have run out and left him, but I felt I couldn't in that state. In a way, I was sorry for him, because really he was ill, sick in mind and body. And I thought perhaps I could calm him down. I might dislike him, but after all, he wasn't a stranger. He was one of our own set, mixed up with most of the people I liked best in the world. I tried to stop him, but everything I said seemed to make him worse. Well, I suppose it would while he was in that excited, abnormal state. Well, he talked about my repressions, and when I pretended to laugh at him, he got more and more excited. And then he tried to show me some beastly, foul drawings he had. Horrible, obscene things by some mad Belgian artist.
Oh my God.
Oh, Frida, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I know how this must be hurting you.
Oh, Martin, Martin.
Well, don't listen anymore. I'll stop if you like.
But he wasn't like that, really. If you'd known him as I'd known him before.
I know that. We all do. He was different. He was ill.
Go on, Owen.
Yes, go on. You can't stop now.
There isn't a lot to tell you. When I pushed his beastly drawings away and was rather indignant about them, he got still more excited, completely unbalanced, and shouted out things about my repressions. And then I found he was telling me to take my clothes off. Well, I told him not to be a fool, and then I was going. But then he stood between me and the door, and he had a revolver in his hand and was shouting something about danger and terror and love. He wasn't threatening me with it or himself. He was just waving it about, being dramatic. I didn't even believe it was loaded. But by this time I had more than enough of him. I couldn't be sorry for him anymore, and I told him to get out of the way. When he wouldn't, I tried to push him out of the way. And then we had a struggle. He tried to tear my clothes. We really fought one another. It was horrible. He wasn't any stronger than I was. I grabbed the hand with the revolver in it. I turned the revolver toward him. His finger must have been on the trigger. I must have given it a jerk. The revolver went off. Oh, horrible. Horrible. I've tried and tried to forget that. If he'd just been wounded, I wouldn't have left him alone. But he wasn't. He was dead.
We understand, Olwen. You needn't tell us.
When I realized what had happened, I rushed out and sat in my car for I don't know how long. I couldn't move a finger. There was nobody about it. It was fairly late. You know how lonely that cottage was. I just sat on and on in the car, shivering. And it was so quiet in that cottage. So horribly quiet. I've gone through that over and over again.
Olwen, you can't be blamed.
Of course you can't be blamed. And there must never be a word spoken about this, not to anybody. We must all promise that.
Give me a cigarette, Robert.
It's a pity we can't be as cool and businesslike about this as you are, Stanton.
I don't feel very cool and businesslike about it. But you see, it's not as big a surprise to me as it is to you people. I guessed long ago that something like this had happened.
But it looked so much like suicide that nobody bothered to suggest it wasn't. It never seemed to me to be anything else. All the evidence pointed that way. I can't think how you could have guessed, Stanton, even though you knew Owen had been there.
I told you I had a third reason. I was over fairly early the next morning. The postman rang me up. And I got there before anybody but the sheriff and the doctor. And I found something on the floor that they had overlooked. Kept it ever since.
Let me see. Yes, that's a piece of the dress I was wearing. It was torn in the struggle we had. So that's how you knew.
Yes.
But why didn't you say something?
I can tell you that. He didn't say anything because he wanted everybody to believe that Martin had shot himself. You see, that meant that Martin must have taken the money.
That's about it. It falls into line with everything we heard from him tonight.
No. There happened to be another reason, much more important. I knew that if Owen had a hand in Martin's death, that something like that must have happened. And so Owen couldn't be blamed. I knew her better than any of you. Or I felt I did. And I trusted her. She's about the only person I would trust. She knows all about that. I've told her often enough. She's not interested. There it is.
And you never even hinted to me that you knew.
Surprising, isn't it? What a chance I missed to capture your interest for a few minutes. But I couldn't take that line with you. I suppose even nowadays, when we're all so damn tough, there's got to be one person to whom you always behave as if you were Sir Lancelot. And with me, you've been that person for a long time now. And I knew all along that you were saying that because you thought that Robert had taken the money, and that he was safe after everybody assumed it was Martin. And it didn't always make it any easier for me.
No, what a shame. But what a fine romantic character you are, aren't you?
But Betty, you don't understand.
No, how could she?
Why do you say that in that tone of voice?
Why does one say anything in any tone of voice?
You know, I nearly did take you into my confidence. And that might have made a difference, but I chose a bad moment.
Why? When was this? Tell me.
I've told you I sat in my car that night for some time, not able to do anything. But when I was feeling a little better, I had to tell somebody, and you were the nearest person.
But you didn't go there that night.
Yes, I did. I drove over to your cottage that very Saturday night. I left my car at the bottom of that tiny narrow lane. I got there about 11 o'clock or just afterwards. I walked up to your cottage, and then I walked back again.
So that's when you came. After that, it was hopeless.
Quite hopeless. I think that added the last touch to that night. I don't think I've ever felt the same about people, not just here, but everybody. Even the people who walk into the office or sit opposite one in buses and trains since that night. I know that's stupid, but I couldn't help it. And you must have all noticed I've been completely off country cottages.
Yes, even Betty's noticed that.
Why, what's the matter, Betty?
What a little liar you are, Betty.
Haven't we all been liars?
But you haven't.
Oh, don't be a fool, Robert. Of course she has. She's lied like fury.
What about?
Why don't you ask her?
Oh, what does it matter? Leave the child alone.
I'm not a child. Oh, that's the mistake you've all made.
Not you and Stanton. Is that what they mean? Why don't you tell them it's ridiculous?
How can she? Don't be absurd.
Oh, drop this. I'm going.
No, you're not going.
Don't be a fool. It's no business of yours.
That's where you're wrong, Stanton.
I'm waiting for your answer, Betty.
What do you want me to say?
Were you with Stanton at his cottage?
Yes.
Were you Stanton's mistress?
Yes.
Betty, in God's name, Stanton, how could you?
How could I? Because I'm not a child. Oh, you would drag all this out. And you can damned well have it. Yes, I stayed with Stanton that night. And I've stayed with him other nights. He's not in love with me, and I know it. And I'm not in love with him. I wouldn't marry him if I could. But I had to make something happen. Gordon was driving me mad. If you want to call someone a child, then call him one, for that's all he is. This damned marriage of ours that you all get so sentimental about is the biggest sham that's ever been. It isn't a marriage at all. It's just nothing. Pretense. Pretense! Betty, darling, and Gordon, darling. The very sight of him makes me want to scream.
Oh, Betty, you mustn't go
It's
on.
not my fault. I was in love with him when we were married, and I thought everything was going to be marvelous. I never would have looked at anybody else if he'd been real. But he just isn't. He can't even talk to me.
For God's sakes, keep quiet,
No,
Betty.
they won't. They want to know the truth and they can have it. I don't care. I have had nothing out of my marriage. If I were the child you all thought, then perhaps it wouldn't have mattered, but I'm not. I'm a woman. And Stanton was the only one who guessed what was happening and treated me like a woman.
I wouldn't have blamed you if you had fallen in love with someone. But this was just a low-sordid intrigue, a dirty little affair. Not worth all your silly lies. I suppose Stanton gave you all those fine presents.
Yes, he did. But you couldn't even be generous, though you'd have given your precious Martin everything we had. I know Stanton didn't really care for me. But men who say they're in love with one woman and then spend their weekends with another deserve all they get.
Is that why you suddenly had to have that money?
Queer how it works out, isn't it?
Then Betty's responsible for all this misery. For Martin.
Always Martin! If I was responsible for all that, Gordon, then it's your fault, really. Because you're responsible for everything that's ever happened to me. You never should have married me.
I didn't know. It was a mistake.
You seem to make that kind of mistake in our family.
I should have left you long before this. That was my mistake. Staying on. Trying to make the best of it. Pretending to be married to someone who isn't there. Simply dead.
I suppose you knew how I felt about you.
Yes, but I didn't care very much.
No. Why should you?
No, it isn't that. But I knew you weren't in love with me. You didn't know me. You were only worshiping someone who you'd made up who looked like me, and that's not the same thing at all.
Yes. I even thought you and Gordon were happy together.
Yes. We put up a good show, didn't we?
You did.
Yes, we did. What would have happened if we got on pretending like hell to be happy together?
Nothing.
No! If we got on pretending long enough, I believe we could have been happy together sometime. It often works out like that.
Never.
Yes, it does. That's why all this is so wrong, really. The real truth is something so deep you can't get at it this way. And all this half-truth does is blow everything up. It isn't civilized.
I agree.
You agree? You might as well.
You'll get no sympathy from me.
Sympathy from you? I never want to set eyes on you again, Stan. You're a liar, a thief, and a dirty seducer.
And you're a fool. You look solid, but you're not. You have a good deal in common with that crack brother of yours. You won't face real things. You've been living in a fool's paradise. And now having got yourself out of it, by tonight's efforts, all your own doing, you're busy building yourself a fool's hell to live in.
I believe this was your glass, Stanton. Now take yourself after it. Get out.
Good night, Owen. I'm sorry about all this.
So am I. Good night.
Good night, Frida.
Good night.
Don't forget, Stanton, we expect your resignation.
Oh, you're going to take it that way, are you?
Yes, I'm going to take it that way.
Good night. No, no trouble. I can find my own way out.
Don't be too hasty, Gordon. Whatever his fault, Stanton's a first-class man at his job. If he goes, the firm will suffer.
I can't help it. The firm will have to suffer, that's all.
Don't worry about the firm. The firm's matched to hell now.
Oh, nonsense.
Is it? I don't think so.
Well, Betty, darling, I think it's time to return to our happy little home. Our dear little nest.
Don't, Gordon.
I'll let you out.
Goodbye.
Why do you look like that?
I'm not saying goodbye to you. I don't know you. I never did, it seems.
Oh, please don't drink anymore tonight, Robert. I know how you feel, but it will only make you worse. Really, it will.
What does it matter? I'm finished anyway.
I can't bear seeing you like this. You don't know how it hurts me.
I'm sorry, Owen. I really am sorry. After all, you're the only one who's really come out of all this. I know that. Strange, isn't it? That you'd be feeling like that about me all the time. And I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not. About myself, I mean. I suppose I ought to be, but I'm not. It hurt at times, but it kept me going.
True, but don't you see? I've stopped going. Something's broken inside.
It won't seem like this tomorrow. It never does.
None of this isn't going to seem any better tomorrow, Owen.
Well, Frida will help you. After all, she is fond of you.
No, not really. It isn't that she dislikes me steadily, but every now and then she hates me. And now I see why, of course. It's because I'm Robert, and not Martin. Because he's dead and I'm alive.
She may feel differently after tonight.
She may. I doubt it. She doesn't change easily. And then again, you see, I don't care anymore. That's the whole point. Whether she changes or doesn't change, I don't care now.
You know, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you, Robert.
I'm terribly grateful. But nothing happens inside. That's the damn awful cruel thing. Nothing happens. All hollow. Empty.
Well, I'm sure it's not all the proper thing to say at such a time, but the fact remains that I feel rather hungry. What about you, Olin? You, Robert? Or have you been drinking too much?
Yes, I've been drinking too much.
Well, it's very silly of you.
Yes.
And you did ask for all this.
I asked for it and I got it.
Though I doubt if you minded very much until it came to Betty.
Oh, that's not true. Oh, I can understand your thinking so. You see, as more and more of this rotten stuff came out, so more and more I came to depend on my secret thoughts of Betty as someone who seemed to me to represent some lovely quality of life.
I've known for some time, of course, that you were getting very sentimental about her. And I've known for some time, too, all about Betty. And I've often thought of telling you.
I'm not sorry you didn't.
You ought to be.
Why?
That kind of self-deception's rather stupid.
Is it? What about you and Martin?
I didn't deceive myself. I knew everything, or nearly everything about him. I wasn't in love with somebody I'd made up.
I think you were. Probably we always are.
Well, then it isn't so bad. You can always build up another image for yourself to fall in love with.
No, you can't. You lose the capacity for building. You run short of the stuff that creates beautiful illusions, just as if a gland had stopped working.
Well, then you have to learn to live without illusions.
Can't be done. Not for us. We started life too early for that. Possibly they're breeding people now who can live without illusions. I hope so. But I can't do it. I've lived among illusions.
You have.
And what if I have? They've given me hope and courage. They've helped me to live. But all I've got is this empty damn shell to live in and all these damn glands and secretions and nerves to do it with. But it didn't look too bad. Like my little illusions, you see.
Then why didn't you leave them alone? Instead of clamoring for the truth all night like a fool.
Because I am a fool. Well, Stanton was right. That's the only answer. I had to meddle, like a child with fire. I began this evening with something to keep me going. I had good memories of Martin. I had a wife who didn't love me, but at least seemed too good for me. I liked and respected my two partners, and there was a girl I could idealize, and now
No, Robert, please. We know.
Oh, you don't know. You can't know, not as I know, or you wouldn't stand there acting as if we'd only had some damn silly little squabble about a handed bridge.
This is mad.
Oh, you don't see it. We're not living in the same world anymore. My brother was an obscene lunatic.
Stop that!
And my wife doted on him and pestered him. One of my partners is a liar, a thief, and a cheat. And the other, God knows what he is. And the girl is a greedy little cat.
Robert, please! No, Robert, it won't be like this tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I tell you, I'm through. I'm through. There can't be a tomorrow.
My God, the gun! Stop, Robert, stop! Stop!
Robert, what was that? Robert!
It's all right. I was showing them my gun and took a crack at a flower pot. Pretty good shot. And what more, I hit it. Pretty lucky. We'll be in a minute.
I should hope so. Those idiots firing Robert's revolver out of the window.
You ought to take it away from him. They nearly frightened the life out of me.
Well, there's no chance of seeing seeing our ghost bird now. If there was there, it must have cleared out pretty quickly.
I should say so, after all that racket.
Well, perhaps it will come back later.
No, I hardly think so. I've never caught sight of it much after 10.
I suppose you all miss your brother-in-law. He used to be up here with you too, didn't he?
You mean Robert's brother, Martin?
Yes.
What made you think of Martin just then?
Well, I don't quite know. He just came into my head, I suppose.
It must have been the shot.
Oh, surely not. I was away at the time and never quite understood what happened. Something rather dreadful, wasn't it? I'm sorry if I...
No, it's all right. It was rather distressing to us at the time, but it's done with now. Martin shot himself. It happened a year ago, last October, in fact, at his own cottage, about 20 miles from here.
Oh, yes, dreadful business, of course. I met him only twice, I think. I remember I thought him very amusing and charming. He was very handsome, wasn't he?
Yes, very handsome.
Who's very handsome?
Oh, not you, Charles.
Well, who is it? Or is it a secret?
Well, they must have been talking about me. Betty, why do you let them rave about your husband like that?
Darling, I'm sure you've had too much manly gossip and old brandy. You're beginning to look purple in the face and bloated. A typical financier.
Why so dim? I'm sorry about the gun, Frida. That was stupid. I hope I didn't frighten anybody.
As a matter of fact, you did. All of us.
Yes, and I've just been saying what a charming little group you've made here, all of you.
I'm glad you think so.
I think so. I think you've all been lucky.
I agree. We have.
It's not all luck, Miss Mockridge. You see, we all happen to be nice, easygoing people.
Except Betty. She's terribly wild.
That's only because Gordon doesn't feed her often enough. Yeah.
You see, Miss Peel, Mr. Stanton is still the cynical bachelor. I'm afraid he rather spoils our picture.
I wonder if there's any dance music on the radio tonight.
I hope not. Let's be quiet. Well, what have you people been talking about?
Owen has been telling us about the sleeping dog.
The Sleeping Dog? Oh yes, that novel we're going to publish. The one she's so keen on.
Why does he call it that?
Don't you know the proverb, let sleeping dogs lie?
Where does that come into it?
From what Olin says, a sleeping dog represents truth.
Yes, and the chief character, the husband, insisted upon disturbing it.
Well, he was quite right to disturb it.
Was he? I wonder. I think it a very sound idea. The truth as a sleeping dog.
Still, we do spend too much of our time telling lies and acting, though.
Oh, but one has to. I'm always fibbing. I do it all day long.
You do, darling, you do.
It's the secret of my charm.
Very likely, but we meant something more serious.
Serious or not, I'm all for it coming out. It's healthy.
Huh. I think telling the truth is about as healthy as skidding around the corner at 60. What do you think, Olin? You're looking terribly wise.
I agree with you. I think telling everything is dangerous. Well, the point is, what most people mean by truth is only half the real truth.
Let's talk about something else. Who wants a drink? Drinks, Robert. A cigarette, Miss Mockridge.
No thanks, that's the one habit I've managed to avoid.
Cigarette, Olin.
Oh, thanks. I remember that box. It plays a tune, doesn't it? I remember the tune. Yes, it's that little melody.
Nice, isn't it?
Wait a minute, listen to this.
I adore this tune.
What is it?
Somebody to love me.
What?
Somebody to love me.
Dance hall?
in a garden fair where roses grow in the tender light of the summer night. I can see her wander to and fro, for she said I'll wait by the garden gate on the night I said I loved